In this section, I want to discuss the economy of the Baltics. And today, when we talk about in terms of the Baltics as being an economic unit, we're generally talking about 9 nations: Germany, Poland, Russia, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, Sweden, and Denmark. And of those 9 nations combined today, that's 70 million people, and it's considered as an economic unit in many ways because their economies are often so linked with each other, and it's an economic bloc in many ways, and very successful bloc. 8 of the 9 nations that I just listed, with the exception of Poland, are outperforming other nations in the EU in terms of economic growth, and sometimes in a huge way. Most of these nations are now part of the EU. I think with the exception possibly of Sweden is not part of the EU, and of course that Kaliningrad, that little tiny exclave which I talked about, just south of Latvia, kind of in Lithuania area, that region, is part of Russia still, and Russia is not part of the EU. They were accepted into the EU in 2004, and now in 2007, this past year, the Schengen Agreement was passed. And the Schengen Agreement means that we have free travel throughout these states without having any kind of border control. So most of Western Europe now, if you were to enter into Spain, for example, you could travel into France, Luxembourg, etc., very easily without stopping, no stamps, no passport checks. These regions are also now a part of that. So traveling through this area has become much easier because of the Schengen Agreement. And becoming part of the EU was a very big thing for this area. And it was very strange. I was there during this time period, and there's all these celebrations and such. But there'd be signs, people saying, welcome to Europe. How do you feel now that you're a European? And it was very strange because people in Latvia and Lithuania and at least like, what were they before when they weren't European? I don't really know, but that's kind of how the West viewed them. Again, this whole perception of Eastern Europeans being somehow inherently different. Sweden has been a huge factor and leader in this area, especially in the what we call the Baltics, and this region I was talking about of Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania. Following the end of the Soviet era in 1991 for most of these nations, Sweden took the lead in investment and rebuilding these economies and having them integrated into this larger economic bloc of the Baltics. And they had something like 60% of the investment. And the result is amazing, really, in the Baltic nations. Especially as you go north to south, the most advanced is really Estonia, going down to Latvia and Lithuania, in terms of, for example, banking practices or healthcare. And what happened was generally the Estonians and Latvians and many others consider themselves generally to be Scandinavian now. And to be Scandinavian to them meant to follow the practices of the Scandinavians wholeheartedly. And they just took on Swedish banking methods, got rid of all the old Soviet-style mess, really, that still remains in Russia today, and modernized everything, computerized everything, and Estonia even allowed its citizens to have free internet, and not only allowed it, but made it part of their constitution that everyone has the right and access to free internet, which is an amazing kind of statement, and it shows the world we're living in that you have a constitutional right to the internet in this area. And the Estonians really use the internet for everything. They use it completely in their parliament, and they have a paperless parliament, basically. And U.S. representatives and senators have often gone to Estonia to see how it's done. And the Estonians use only voting now through the internet in all elections. They do their parking and such through their phones. Then every person in the Baltics, like most people in the world today, has a cell phone, and they do everything. You can pay for your parking, you pay for banking, you can pay for bills with your phone in many cases. Very few people, when you go out to a restaurant, you always use your debit card. No one really uses cash very often. Like I said, the banking and such is amazing. Most people pay all of their bills, major bills, through online banking, and it's very easy to transfer money through your online accounts. And this area has become the leader to the world, really, throughout the Baltics, of how this is done. And they basically skipped the old technology, skipped landlines, because under the Soviet era, no one really had phones. You'd be waiting on a phone for 8-10 years, and they skipped right ahead. Let's go right to the cellular world when the technology arrived. And the Baltics have been very progressive in this way. And their economies are soaring, as I said, because of it. Again, the exception is Kaliningrad. Although the Soviets have tried to keep up with the rest, they've made this a special economic zone, SEZ, and have reduced taxes and such, and have tried to increase investment in this area. With some success. It's more successful than the rest of Russia, but not to the same extent that the Baltics are. If it fully opens up at some point or becomes even part of a special section of the EU, which I think would be a great thing, maybe that will change. But Kaliningrad is still very much shut off. It's very difficult to travel there. Getting a visa to Russia is still very much a pain and expensive, usually a few $100s, where most of Europe there's no visa requirement if you're an American flying in, for example. What are these people selling in the Baltics? A lot of it is from the natural landscape. Again, timber is a huge part of their industry, and if you ever went to IKEA, most of the furniture today is made from wood from the Baltics. There's also just high technology, kind of high-tech services that they often perform. The people are very well educated, and so it's really, again, it's this part of this high-tech business that they're part of. Not so much manufacturing, but in service-oriented kind of ways. Today, there's a lot of tourism. I mentioned in an earlier one, 1.5 million tourists go just to Riga alone each year, and it's a very famous place for Russians to vacation. There's an area called Yurmala right outside the city of Riga, which was a place where aristocrats in the 19th century used to go to the beach of that area. And there's beautiful old homes that are now being renovated of that time period. Khrushchev and Brezhnev used to love vacationing in Yurmala. You've probably never heard of it, but it's a great place to go. I've been there myself. And although the Baltics is not a place for hot weather, it's a nice place to hang out on the beach, though. There's also a lot of mineral baths, and there's a huge sauna culture to all of Scandinavia. And saunas and things are also something that is exported. But generally, there's shipping industry and commercial trade becoming a large part of the economy in this area as well. Again, Riga leads this. The Port of Riga, capital of Latvia, is very successful in this regards. And Kaliningrad is trying to catch up to that as well. They're again based on new investment to this area. But generally, the economy is soaring in most of the Baltics. It's a great place to visit. It's cheaper than most of Western Europe. It's a great place and a safe place to travel. You can walk around at night. Like I said, especially in the summertime, it's bright out. It's beautiful. British tourism. British are flocking to Tallinn and Riga at the moment. And like I said, there's tour lines that come into both cities. But if you ever get a chance, this area is a wonderful place to travel to, and WVU has a relationship with the University of Tartu in Estonia, and we've sent students to this area, and if you're interested, send me an email and I'll give you some information on that as well. But it's a great place to go visit if you get a chance at some point in the future.